In 336 BC, a 20-year-old rose to the throne of Macedonia, a kingdom to the north of Greece in southeastern Europe. Within 13 years, Alexander III created the most powerful empire the world had ever seen and earned the title Alexander the Great. When Alexander was a boy, his father, King Philip II, brought all of Greece under his control. Alexander learned military skills and leadership from his father. But he also had another teacher, Aristotle, the legendary Greek philosopher. Aristotle gave Alexander a classical Greek education and taught him the importance of learning and the arts. When his father was assassinated, Alexander succeeded to the throne and began to plan the fulfillment of his father's most ambitious dream. One of Alexander's first actions as king was to put down a growing revolt in the Greek city of Thebes. He sacked the city as a warning to anyone who questioned his leadership. The news spread quickly. When Alexander's troops arrived in Athens, few opposed them. Alexander offered the Greeks a shrewd proposal. If they gave him men and supplies for his army, he would march against the Persian Empire and liberate the lands that the Persians had taken from Greece. In 334 BC, with his army of 35,000 Greek and Macedonian soldiers, Alexander began one of the most successful military campaigns in history. His troops won their first victory over the Persians at the Granicus River. They then swept across Asia Minor, taking city after city. In 333 BC, Alexander met the forces of the king of Persia, Darius III, in Issus in northern Syria. Although Alexander's army was significantly smaller than the Persians, superior tactics allowed him to claim victory and send Darius running. At the age of 23, Alexander could have returned to Greece a hero. Instead, he set his sights on capturing the rest of the Persian Empire. He next took control of Syria and then turned his troops towards Egypt. The Egyptians welcomed Alexander. Like the Greeks in Asia Minor, they had suffered years of oppression under the Persians. Alexander's empire now covered about 500,000 square miles. In 332 BC, the Egyptians made Alexander their pharaoh, a title they gave to rulers they believed descended from the gods. From Egypt, Alexander drove eastward and won victory after victory. In 331 BC, he captured the Persian city of Babylon. Over the next few years, his army conquered the easternmost provinces of Persia. He then pushed even further east over the Hindu Kush into India before returning triumphantly to Babylon. Wherever Alexander and his army went, they brought with them the achievements of Greek culture. They built a new city on the banks of the Nile, Alexandria. Like cities in Greece, Alexandria's streets were laid out on a grid. Theaters, stadiums, temples, assembly halls, and a great library were built, all reminders of Greece. All across his empire, Alexander founded new cities, most of them named after him. In each, Greek soldiers and merchants settled down to live. In these cities, Greek culture mixed with Egyptian, Hebrew, Persian, and Indian influences to form the Hellenistic civilization. Alexander and his successors supported the work of scholars and artists. The palaces and public buildings of the Hellenistic world were often larger and grander than those of Greece. Alexander encouraged the blending of Eastern and Western cultures. He married a Persian woman and allowed Persian governors to administer portions of his empire. Alexander adopted many Persian traditions. He wore lavish Persian robes and demanded those approaching him to bow in the Persian manner. Alexander had marched 11,000 miles and traveled farther east than any European before him. It's said he wept because there were no worlds left to conquer. But in 323 BC, the man who had never lost a battle was struck down by a fever at the age of 33. Alexander died, and soon his empire crumbled. But the memory and cultural achievements of Alexander the Great lived on. Alexander's conquests spread Greek culture and led to the creation of Hellenistic civilization. This mixture of Western and Eastern cultures endured and thrived. The later Roman, Byzantine, and Islamic civilizations would all be fundamentally influenced by this Hellenistic world, a world forged by Alexander the Great.